Welcome to Travel On. In this video, we are going to visit 20 of Italy's best hidden gems. I'm positive there are towns on this list that you have never heard of. These towns are often overlooked by travelers, leaving them less crowded and more authentic. The cities on this list will help you beat the crowds while exploring some of Italy's most beautiful hidden gems. Ready? Let's get to it. Our first stop is Matera. Matera is a city in southern Italy known for its ancient cave dwellings, which were carved into the hillsides. The old districts are made up of stone houses, stairways, and narrow lanes that climb and twist around the slopes. Many of the caves have been turned into homes, shops, or small hotels, but you can still see some left as they were. From higher points in the city, you can look out over the ravine and see how the buildings blend into the rock. The streets often feel more like a series of steps and terraces than roads, and they weave through clusters of stone buildings that seem stacked on top of each other. Some houses are partly carved from rock and partly built from it, so it's hard to tell where the cliffs end and the architecture begins. There are old churches cut into the hillsides with faded frescoes still on the walls. At night, when the buildings are lit, the caves glow softly against the dark sky. Ostuni. Ostuni is a hill town in Puglia known for its whitewashed buildings that give off Greek island vibes. The old town is a maze of narrow lanes, archways, and staircases that wind up to a cathedral at the top. The streets are lined with small shops, cafes, and houses with brightly painted doors set into the white walls. The streets aren't laid out in straight lines, so you end up turning corners into small courtyards or finding stairways that lead to hidden viewpoints. Many buildings have stone door frames that are worn smooth from age. From certain spots, you can see rows of olive trees all the way to the sea, with small stone huts scattered in between. In the evenings, the town is lit with soft lights, and the narrow streets feel calm and quiet. Viterbo. Viterbo is a city in central Italy with a well-preserved medieval center surrounded by stone walls and gates. Inside, there are narrow streets, old stone houses, and small squares where daily life happens. The city was once a seat of the papacy, and you can still visit the Papal Palace, which has a large open loggia overlooking the town. The main square by the Papal Palace opens onto views over the rooftops, and its wide stone steps are a common place for people to sit. There are also historic churches, public fountains, and natural hot springs in the surrounding area. Many streets are paved with dark stone and lined with buildings that have arched doorways and carved details worn smooth over centuries. Some houses have small external staircases that lead to the front door, with space underneath for storage or a shop. Scattered through the city are old fountains, often with carved faces or animals where the water flows out. Ragusa. Ragusa is a hilltop city in southern Sicily that's split into two parts: Ragusa Ibla, the old town, and Ragusa Superiore, the newer section above it. Ibla is full of narrow streets, old stone buildings, and a main square with a Baroque cathedral. The two parts of the city are connected by winding roads and stairways, and from certain spots you can see the whole valley below. The cathedral is called Duomo di San Giorgio, Cathedral of St. George, and is a standout example of Sicilian Baroque architecture. The cathedral has a grand, curved staircase leading up to its large entrance, and its facade is decorated with columns, statues, and things typical of the Baroque style. The bell tower adds to the cathedral's impressive silhouette against the town skyline. Ragusa Ibla feels like it hasn't rushed to catch up with the modern world. You can walk through streets that twist and slope, passing balconies with hanging laundry and doorways that look worn from decades of use. The central piazza is where people gather, especially in the evenings, and it's ringed with cafes where you can sit and just watch the pace of life. There are small churches tucked into the side streets, some open and some not, each probably with its own bit of history. From the edges of Ibla, you get wide views over the surrounding countryside, dotted with olive trees and stone walls. The climb between Ibla and the upper town is steep, but it's lined with steps and viewpoints that make it worth stopping along the way. Tropea. Tropea is a small coastal town in Calabria, built on cliffs that drop straight down to the sea. The historic center has narrow streets, old buildings with faded colors, and balconies that overlook the water. Below the town are sandy beaches and clear blue water, and just offshore there's a small rocky island with a monastery on top. The old streets are lined with small shops, cafes, and bakeries selling the town's famous sweet red onions. Stairs lead down from the town to the beaches, where the water stays clear and calm. The island with the monastery, called Santa Maria dell'Isola, is close enough to walk to, and from the top you can see both the sea and the rooftops of Tropea. Away from the main streets, you'll find quiet corners where locals sit outside their doors, talking and watching the day go by. The locals are usually talking about this channel, Travel On, of course, and how they really wish you'd all help the algorithm push it out to a wider audience by clicking like and subscribing. Really, that's what they're saying. Pitigliano. Pitigliano is a small town in Tuscany built on a hill of soft tufa rock. The buildings seem to grow out of the cliff itself, with narrow streets winding up and down steep slopes. There are tunnels and caves carved into the rock underneath the town, some of which were once used as cellars or shelters. The town has a mix of medieval and Renaissance architecture, and you can see views of the surrounding countryside from several points. Pitigliano's streets often feel narrow and steep, with stone walls on either side and stairs instead of sidewalks. Many buildings have old wooden shutters and small balconies. 2,000-year-old pathways cut into the rock by the Etruscans connect the town with surrounding valleys, necropolises, and other settlements. The town has a quiet, almost hidden feeling because of its tucked-away position. From some of the viewpoints, you get a nice view of the rolling hills covered with vineyards, olive groves, and forests. In the evenings, the town lights up softly, and the stone buildings take on a warm color. Montepulciano. Built on a hill with narrow, winding streets and old stone buildings, Montepulciano features Renaissance architecture with palaces, churches, and piazzas that feel like they've stayed the same for centuries. The streets are lined with shops, cafes, and make for a pleasant stroll. Many streets have a gentle slope and are paved with worn stones. The main square, Piazza Grande, has large stone buildings around it, including a town hall and the Cattedrale di Santa Maria Assunta, Cathedral of St. Mary of the Assumption. Walking through the town, you'll find small wine cellars and tasting rooms tucked into old basements or courtyards. From some spots near the edge of town, you get wide views of fields filled with grapevines and olive trees, with hills that stretch out towards the horizon. The town has a steady rhythm of daily life, with people shopping, chatting, and sitting at outdoor tables. Siracusa. Siracusa is an old port city in Sicily that has been around for over 2,700 years. You can see ancient ruins like the Greek theater, wander narrow streets on the island of Ortigia, and explore markets and seaside views. It's the kind of place where everyday Sicilian life happens alongside layers of history. The island of Ortigia, which is the old heart of the city, is small enough to walk across in 10 minutes, but it's full of piazzas, churches, and little lanes that open up to the sea. There's a fresh food market most mornings where you can watch locals buying fish, fruit, and cheese. Just outside of Ortigia, the archaeological park has a huge Greek theater still used for plays, a Roman amphitheater, and ancient quarries you can walk through. The waterfront is always nearby, and the light at sunset makes the whole place look warm and golden. San Gimignano. In Tuscany, San Gimignano is loaded with medieval towers that rise above the rooftops. The old town is surrounded by walls and has narrow streets paved with stones. The streets are narrow and winding, with shops and cafes set into stone buildings. Some towers are tall and slim, while others are wider and shorter, giving the town a unique, if not unorthodox, skyline. Inside, you'll find old buildings, small squares, and simple churches. The town feels like a snapshot of the Middle Ages. The main square has a few buildings with open arches and a small town hall. Walking through the town, you'll notice stone doorways and windows with wooden shutters. From higher points like the towers or walls, you can look out over rolling hills covered with vineyards, fields, and scattered farmhouses. The town feels quiet during the day, with only the sound of footsteps on stone or occasional conversations. Polignano a Mare. Polignano a Mare is a small town in Puglia built right on the edge of limestone cliffs over the Adriatic Sea. The historic center has whitewashed buildings, narrow streets, and balconies that hang over the water. The streets sometimes open up to terraces where you can see straight down to the sea below. Many of the buildings have poems painted on their walls or doorways, and some staircases have verses written on the steps. The small beach, Lama Monachile, sits between two cliffs and is reached by a stone bridge and a path down. Boats sometimes pass under the cliffs through sea caves, and from certain spots you can watch them from above. In the evenings, the white walls of the town reflect the warm light, and the sound of people talking mixes with the crash of waves against the rocks from below. Volterra. Volterra is a hilltop town in Tuscany with walls and buildings made of warm-colored stone. It has a quiet, old feel with narrow streets, ancient ruins, and medieval towers. The streets are mostly stone and often slope up or down between the buildings. If you look up while strolling through the town, you'll see small windows and wooden shutters. The large main square, Piazza dei Priori, has a palace and a cathedral nearby. The palace is called Palazzo dei Priori, and it's currently the town hall and one of the oldest palaces in Tuscany. The cathedral is called Volterra Cathedral, or Cattedrale di Santa Maria Assunta. You'll find ancient ruins like an ancient theater tucked into the town, along with smaller museums that tell the story of the place. From the town's edges or towers, you can look out across rolling hills dotted with farms and olive trees. The town feels calm and slow, with a quiet atmosphere and fewer tourists than some other Tuscan towns. Lucca. Also in Tuscany, Lucca is a small city known for its complete Renaissance-era walls that enclose the old town. The walls are wide enough to walk or bike on, with trees and paths along the way. Inside, the streets are narrow and lined with old buildings, small squares, and churches. Many streets are quiet and paved with cobblestones, so the only sound you hear might be your own footsteps. You'll find small shops, cafes, and bakeries along the narrow lanes. The city feels compact with places to sit outside and watch everyday life. The city has several towers you can climb for views over the red-tiled roofs and nearby countryside. The main squares have fountains and places where people gather, especially in the evenings. To walk all the way around Old Town on the city walls takes about 1 or 1.5 hours. It's about 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles and has places to stop and rest or just enjoy the views. Overall, Lucca feels like a peaceful place where daily life moves at a relaxed pace. Urbino. Urbino is a small hill town in the Mare region with a Renaissance feel. The streets are often steep and narrow and, yes, lined with old stone houses and small shops that lead up to a large ducal palace, appropriately named Palazzo Ducale, which has a big courtyard and towers you can explore. Inside the palace is a museum with art and historical artifacts connected to the town's past. Around the town there are churches with simple but beautiful interiors. Because there's a university, you'll see young people walking the streets alongside locals, giving the town a calm and quiet feeling during the day with a gentle mix of history and daily life. Bologna. One of the more famous cities on our list is Bologna, a city in northern Italy known for its long covered walkways called porticos that stretch along many streets. The porticos create covered paths that make walking through the city feel like moving through a tunnel of arches. The city has old brick buildings, 2 leaning towers, and large squares where people gather. The 2 leaning towers, Asanelli and Garisenda, stand near the center and can be climbed if you want a view over the red-tiled roofs. The streets are usually busy with shops, cafes, and markets selling fresh food. Small restaurants serve local dishes like pasta and cured meats. The city has a mix of old buildings with carved doorways and lively modern spots where people meet. Overall, Bologna feels energetic and full of everyday moments. Because of its size, it's probably a good place to either begin or end your travels out to some of the other towns on this list. Spoleto. Spoleto in Umbria has a mix of ancient and medieval buildings. It's built on hills, so you're usually walking uphill or downhill on narrow stone-paved streets with stone walls and arches. The town has a large Roman amphitheater, old churches, and a fortress on a hill overlooking everything. The fortress, called Rocca Albornoziana, sits on a hill and has walls and towers you can walk around for views of the town and valley below. Around the town there are several churches with simple stone facades and quiet courtyards. The town feels lived in, with markets, cafes, and quiet squares. A perfect place for sitting and relaxing while double-checking that you've hit that like button and maybe even subscribe to this channel. Assisi. Assisi is a small hill town in Umbria known for its religious history and peaceful streets. The town has stone buildings, narrow alleys, and a large basilica with 750-year-old frescoes inside. Many of the streets can be quite steep and paved with stone, so if it's rained recently, be extra careful. But if you take your time, I'm sure you'll enjoy winding past old houses with wooden shutters and flower pots on the windowsills up above. You can't miss the Basilica of St. Francis near the town center, with painted walls inside showing scenes from the saint's life. Construction on the basilica began shortly after St. Francis was canonized in 1228, and the basilica was consecrated only 25 years later in 1253. The town does have several smaller churches and quiet courtyards tucked away between buildings. From higher points, you can look out over green hills, olive groves, and fields. The town feels calm and gentle, with a steady rhythm of local life and visitors passing through. Perugia. Perugia is a city in Umbria built on a hill with a mix of old and new parts. The historic center has the usual narrow stone-paved streets with shops, cafes, and old tall buildings with colorful shutters and small balconies. A word of caution, the old town streets twist and slope and are often paved with uneven stones, so wear good walking shoes. The main square has a fountain and the Cathedral of St. Lawrence nearby. You'll find cafes and gelato shops lining the streets and people sitting outside to talk or watch passers-by. The city's walls and medieval gates still stand, with some spots where you can walk along the top for views over the rooftops of the hills below. Because of the university, the city feels lively and has a mix of students and locals moving about. Taormina. Taormina is a hilltop town on the east coast of Sicily with views of the sea and Mount Etna. It has narrow streets, small squares, and a mix of old buildings, including an ancient Greek theater that's still used for events. The Greek theater is partly carved into the rock and partly built, with stone seats with an open view to the sea and Mount Etna beyond. As expected, the main street running through the old town is lined with shops, cafes, and small churches. Side streets often lead to quiet courtyards or stairways that climb up or down the hillside. Public gardens have shaded paths and benches with plants and flowers from different parts of the world. The town is close to beaches and has gardens and terraces where you can look out and see the coastline stretching in both directions, with small bays and headlands. Cefalu. Cefalu is a small coastal town in Sicily with a long sandy beach right next to its old town. The streets are narrow and often paved with stone, with buildings that show layers of influence from the Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Normans. The main landmark is its Norman cathedral, Duomo di Cefalu, with tall towers and detailed mosaics inside. The old wash house, carved partly into the rock, still has channels where fresh water still runs through. The fishing harbor is small but still active, with boats pulling up along the shore. Many of the streets lead toward the sea, so you often catch glimpses of the water as you walk. The town is compact, so you can explore most of it on foot in a day, and at sunset, the light on the cathedral and the sea can be especially striking. Tellaro. Tellaro is a small Ligurian fishing village built on a rocky coastline with narrow lanes that lead to the sea. The buildings are painted in soft pinks and yellows, and the water is usually clear and calm. There's a small harbor where fishing boats are tied up, and a church that sits right above the waves. Tellaro has a long connection to the sea, and local stories say the village was once saved from a pirate attack when an octopus rang the church bells to warn people. Or maybe that's just the local limoncello talking. The village streets are steep and twist between stone houses, and you can often smell the sea from anywhere you stand. There are small rocky spots for swimming, and the water can look almost turquoise on clear days. From the village, you can see the coastline curve toward Porto Venere, and at sunset, the light makes the buildings glow. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this list, and if there's any place you think I missed, drop it in the comments below and I'll add it to an upcoming video. I hope to see you in the next one, and until then, stay safe and travel on.